I'm really glad you all came. I'm very glad to be here. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, which was actually the start of a really good movie and has nothing to do with what I'm going to talk about, I talk about the elephant in the room. And we're going to cover the 4 keys to taming it. The elephant in the room are those mental and emotional blocks that hold you back and keep you playing small. So there are 4 keys to taming an elephant. These keys open you up to be able to see new things. But there's a challenge. The keys are in a cabinet. And to get to the cabinet, we're going to go over 4 questions. And as we go along, you'll get a lot of my story, how I ended up here, and why I do what I do. But the first question, think about what you have in your life that you like, what you enjoy in your life right now. What do you want more of? This was a question that got me started on a different journey. So the question is, what do you want more of? My list was really, really short, okay? I wanted more money. I wanted more hugs. Yeah, better relationships, more hugs. I wanted more safety. I wanted to feel secure. And I wanted more self-confidence. I was a mess. I had a failed marriage, 3 confused, hurt preschoolers, and a fledgling business. And the month that I could eke out the rent without the child support, you know where I'm going with this. The child support stopped. And not only did the child support stop, the support system went away because he moved out of the state and his family divorced us completely. Learning what I wanted more of helped me come out of that, but it took more than just that. I sought help in Western medicine because I was on a downhill slide. So Western medicine, good stuff. Think counseling, therapy, medication, and I was stable again. And that was good until I wasn't. And so this was my journey, was this roller coaster. And learning to answer the question, what do I want more of, helped pull me along. Now the second question that's going to open this cabinet is, what do you want less of? Now what I wanted less of was really simple. I wanted less debt. I wanted less weight. I also wanted less guessing. And I wanted fewer wishy-washy results. And wishy-washy is actually too soft of a word for the results that I was getting in my life. My second marriage was failing. I sought help again. I went back to Western medicine, but this time I wanted a cure. They don't talk in that language. More therapy, more counseling, more medication, and I was stable again. And it was like I had gathered a lot of trash in my head over the time, a lot of mental and emotional trash, and Western medicine helped me put it in bags. It didn't take up as much room, and it didn't smell so bad, but it was still in my way. And I could still smell it, and I figured other people could too, so it made me a little edgy. Western medicine didn't have my answer, so when my second marriage was falling apart, I went into Eastern healing arts. I thought they'd been around longer. I'll be able to find my answer there. I found really good stuff, and I deep dove into it because that's what I do. And 5 years later, I'm certified in Eastern healing arts, and I found meditation and mindfulness and spirituality and no cure, because they don't talk in that language. So I'm stable, but I'm not so happy, because while my mental and emotional trash is all in bags, I lived in fear every day. Lived in fear that something would come along, rip open one of those bags, and I would be left dealing with that mess. So I'm like, okay, I've got the body, I've got the spirit. I'll study the mind. Because that's what we do, body, mind, spirit, that's what I needed. So I studied the mind, and I studied neuro-linguistic programming. I studied how the mind actually works, what goes on in our brain when we get stressed. And I studied mediation, 'cause because I love good communication. So I'm a mediator by training. You kind of get the picture. I'm the lifelong learner. Yeah, what used to be called a seminar junkie, now we're called lifelong learners. We've been upgraded. Yeah. So I had the body, the mind, and the spirit, and I thought I had it all together. I was stable as long as I was holding still. As soon as I tried a new job, new relationship, new location, it was like I was riding a three-legged elephant, and it was a herky-jerky ride. What was missing? Body, mind, spirit. Well, what was missing was the big E, the emotions. So I studied the emotions, and one day I realized that I had cured myself. I was no longer afraid. I was no longer angry. I was excited, and I had to find a way to package it together so that it could work for everyone. And so that's what I've done. That's the journey I've been on, and that's where the 4 keys come from. Body, mind, spirit, emotions are integrated when we're born, and then life happens. And so we fall apart. And so the training that I finally ended up with reintegrates those pieces so that body, mind, and spirit work together again. You're going to get a little bit of each while we go through the 4 keys. But so we've got the 2 questions, right? What do you want more of in your life? What do you want less of? The 3rd question is, how are you going to measure it? Now, this was a big deal for me. You can only measure things that are tangible, okay? More money, less debt. Those 2 things I could measure. End of the month, I could look at my bank statement, I could look at my credit card statement, I could see if I was making progress. More hugs. That was easier to measure than better relationships. Better relationships are not so easy to measure. More hugs I could measure. I could just put notches on my lipstick case. Yeah, I was good. But what about the other things? How do you measure self-confidence? How do you measure security and safety? Yeah, less weight, that I could measure. They invented scales for that. That's why I don't own one. But there were things you could do, except for the intangibles. So I created scales. And so this is going to be your first thing you get to measure tonight. On a scale of 1 to 10, just check in with your body. On a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is completely shut down and uptight, and 10 is completely relaxed, almost asleep, what's your number right now? And just write it down. So just check in. We're going to come back and visit it. So the scale is 1 to 10, where 1 is uptight, and 10 is completely relaxed. And so just jot down your number. I'm going to teach you how to measure something you haven't measured before as we get into the first key. So now we have 3 of the questions. The 4th question's the really telling one, and I've already told you some of my answers. The 4th question is, what have you done in the past to get more of what you want and less of what you don't want? And this is a question some of these things you're going to noodle with at home. You don't have to do them here. But what have you done in the past? My journey through Western medicine, Eastern healing arts, the mental game with communication and neurolinguistic programming, and studying the emotions, what they now call the emotional quotient or emotional intelligence. Those are the things that I did in the past to try to get more of what I wanted and less of what I didn't want. What have you done? It's important to know what you've done so that you know what's worked, and you can do more of that. You could just do that again, and what didn't work, so that you don't have to do that again. Wouldn't it be nice if you never had to repeat something that didn't function for you ever again? That's what that question will help you shine a light on, what worked and what didn't. So now we've opened the cabinet, and those 4 questions you can use as a guide for yourself to check in at any point in your life. I recommend people do it when I'm working with them, that they do it every 2 months, every 60 days. We do a check-in. Because what you want more of and what you want less of might change. So now comes the first key. Again, there are 4 keys. A lot of things I do come in 4s, okay? You notice there were 4 things I studied, there were 4 questions. Well, there are 4 keys. And one of the reasons for that is because an elephant has 4 legs when he's stable, and it makes it really easy for me to remember. And the other is that this way, if you've got 3 things written down and I'm moving on to the next section, you can say, Jackie, you forgot something, okay? Feel free to call me out. Some of the things that I do, I'm going to ask you if they sound good. And so I try to give you the disclaimer. I come from a family of Southern preachers. So we're used to call and response. So if I say sound good because something sounded good to me, if it sounds good to you, just echo it back to me, okay? So you can participate a little bit. The first key is the key of awareness. Oh, by the way, the elephant that we're riding, the 4 legs, the elephant's name is Ahab. So your 4 keys: awareness, honesty, actions, and boundaries. Okay, so those are the 4 keys: awareness, honesty, and that's about getting honest with yourself about the attitude you bring to your life. Actions and boundaries. And so we're going to start with awareness. The stress reaction in our body is the same as it's always been, okay? We have a common ancestor. His name is Og. He's a caveman. And Og is just having a normal day. He's schlepping along, nothing much going on, and then think saber-toothed tiger, potentially life-ending event. Rah! If we freeze the frame right there, Og's body has changed completely in that instant. His bloodstream is flooded with chemicals, the blood flows to his arms and legs, he's ready to fight or flee. Ready to, oh, and it's okay, he's not gonna die here. How do we know? He's our ancestor, we're all here. So he's gonna survive this encounter. But what we wanna just study is what happened in that second. 2 systems in his body shut down. The first is digestion, because he does not need to digest the lunch that he just ate when he's trying to avoid becoming lunch for someone else. And the second is healing. His body does not need to focus resources on healing the scratch he got yesterday when he's concerned about being lacerated today. He fights, he flees, and he gets away. When he is done, and the danger is over, he's relieved. Boy, am I glad that's over. He takes some deep breaths and shakes it off. And if we could freeze the frame again, his body chemistry has returned to normal. That's really important. This is how the system was designed. And for Og the caveman, it worked elegantly. For us today, not so much. The reason is really simple. Our brains can do something that Og's brain could not do. We can predict the future. We can forecast. The other thing our brains can do that Og's brain could not do is remember. So today, our bodies react exactly the same way that Og's did. But our bodies can't tell the difference between a real threat, a perceived threat, or the memory of a threat. Memory of a threat is what is classically called PTSD. And that's exactly what happens. Something trips the memory, and the body goes right back to that life-threatening event. And all of the biochemical changes happen. The real problem for me was not so much the memory of a threat. That didn't come up for me for later. But what I realized was that if my boss stood over my shoulder, I wouldn't be able to think. And I couldn't figure out why. Well, now I know it was because I perceived that as a threat. What happened? The blood went to my arms and my legs. And the blood comes from the head. Great for Og the caveman. It prevented him from bleeding to death if he had a head injury. Not so good for me, because the outer areas of the brain are where all of our cognitive functions are. It's where our memory is, it's where our reasoning is, and it's also where our speech comes from. So when I felt a perceived threat, I couldn't think. I couldn't remember the information that he wanted, and I couldn't answer him. And when he was gone, I wasn't taking a deep breath. Matter of fact, I was doing the opposite of taking a deep breath. I was still holding my breath. So my body, instead of resetting the way that Og's did, got trapped with those chemicals in my bloodstream until there was gradual degradation. And that takes hours, unless some other perceived threat, real threat, or memory of a threat comes along. And then we're flooded with those chemicals again, but we're starting from a higher level. And this is what is going on in the world today, okay? Our digestion shuts down. We cannot digest our food accurately, effectively, because we keep interfering with the digestion system. We also cannot heal autoimmune diseases. Oh, by the way, this is the startling statistic of awareness. 75 to 90% of all primary care doctor visits are for stress-related conditions. 75 to 90%. There's a reason why our gross national product is very medically dependent. A lot of it is in the medical field, and this is why. We don't understand how the body works, except you all do now. But most people don't understand how the body works, and so they're forever interfering with their ability to heal and their ability to digest. So we're going to do something. We're going to reset the system. I am about to give you the cure for the plague of the 21st century. Sound good? No? All right, try again. Yeah, sound good? Yeah. Sounds good. Gonna have to work on this a little bit. All right. After the thread is over, Og stopped and took some deep breaths. And that's what we're gonna do. So everybody take a deep breath with me. This is an experiment. And we're gonna take 2 more. So breathing in. And 1 more time. Now, go back to that scale. Check in with your body. On a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is completely uptight and 10 is completely relaxed, how do you feel now? And look, write it down, and then compare it to the number you started with. Anybody's number go towards relaxation more than 2 points? No. If your number went down and you are more uptight now than you were before we did that exercise, see me after the workshop, okay? We'll arrange for an elephant hunt. We'll do 30 minutes. We'll see what's going on with that. It's physiologically pre-programmed. How do you use this key? If you practice stopping and taking 3 deep breaths consciously, you can reset your system. You can retrain your body to come out of high alert. How do you do that? Set an alarm on your phone, let it go off every hour, and every hour stop and take 3 deep breaths. I have people put DSB on a Post-it note, tape it to their phone, deep, slow breath, DSB, and that way they remember to take a deep, slow breath before they answer their phone. Okay? When you can have the experience of emotional control, when you know that you are relaxed and calm, it's not going to matter what the phone call's about so much. And people who are on the other end are going to hear that your throat's relaxed, that you're smiling. And that's really key in this day of eye rollers. I'm sorry. You know what an you know what an eye roller is. Okay. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, all right? But does anybody in here have a designated ringtone on their phone for the one person you don't want to talk to? Yeah. If you ever see somebody who does, give them a clue, because what they've done is set themselves up to go into fight or flight mode every time that ringtone goes off. It was much saner before we had caller ID. Yeah. Yeah. For those who don't know, an eye roller is that person who, when their caller ID shows up on your phone, the eyes automatically go back in your head. Yeah. So, being able to take 3 deep, slow breaths, or even 1 deep, slow breath before you answer the phone will help you experience emotional control and make other people wonder why you're not responding the way that you used to. So that's the first key. The second key, we did awareness, now we're going to go into honesty, and honesty is about your attitude. So here's your question for honesty. What would my attitude be if I believed I worked with the absolute best company, product, service, people, clients? What would my attitude be? If I got up in the morning and believed that I worked with the best company, product, people, clients, boss, what would your attitude be? This is a great exploration, and in large groups I do it as an exercise where I have people stand up. Yeah, I have you stand up, say what your attitude, say that statement. You know, I believe that I work for the best company. I work with the best product or service. I work with the best people. I have the best clients, the best boss. And then anybody whose brain says, that's not true, I have to sit down. You know? And 90% of the room will sit down. We don't believe that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing with the people we're supposed to be doing, helping and serving the way we're supposed to be serving most of the time. This creates a lot of stress. But if you can get to a place where you know that your attitude is under your control, because we can choose our attitude. So if you started with this attitude of believing that you work with the best company, the best product or service, the best people, the best boss, the best clients, notice what difference it makes in your world. That's awareness. That's awareness, and then honesty about your attitude. The third key is the key of action. Once you've gotten the awareness that you can check in with your body and you've gotten honest about your attitude and started working with it, taking some control over it, then we get into action. And here's your question. What action would I take? Believing that I work with the best company, product, service. What action would I take if I knew I was the right person for the job? I was the right person to move this product forward. I was the right person to bring this service into the world. I was the right person to parent these kids. Now, that for me was one of my big ones. Okay, so back to my story a little bit. Remember, one of the things I wanted less of was guessing? There was a reason. I was guessing my life away on minor things. Like, I was guessing that this was the right guy for me to marry. And then I was guessing that this was the right way to reward my kids or discipline my employees. I was a little confused about that. And then I was guessing about this was the right bill to pay, because I was guessing that there would still be money in the bank to pay the rest of them at the end of the month. And I wanted less guessing. And so that's how I ended up with, like, how do you measure it? And how I ended up with this key of actions. Because if I know it's the best and I'm aware of what's going on, what actions do I take? Well, if I know I'm the best parent, I'm not going to reward my kids. I am going to educate my kids. If I know that I'm the best employee, I'm not going to risk showing up late. I'm going to be there on time. You know, it's all about being able to look at what are the actions I would take if I knew I was the best person to do this. And you're going to find a lot of junk comes up in your head. Remember that mental and emotional trash that I talked about? I did not bring my trash bags with me. Sometimes I do, because we can get trash in our heads that gets into bags, and we got big black ones and small white ones and all different sizes and shapes. And it is that mental and emotional trash that gets in the way of us taking the actions that we would take if we knew we were the right people for the job. So we've moved through 3 of the keys pretty quickly. So we went through awareness, we went through honesty and attitude, and we went through actions. And all of that was to set you up for the 4th key. Ahab, the B, it's for boundaries. And boundaries come up with the ballpark theory. The ballpark theory is my favorite place to go because we've all had this kind of experience, I think. Well, many people have. Let's see. Have you ever been on a plane with somebody who was so excited that that was all they could talk about for the entire plane trip? Yeah, okay. Young ball player, has been called up to the show. He's going to play for the Atlanta Braves. This young man is so excited. It is all he can do to have the seatbelt on the plane. And everybody on the plane, and I do mean everybody on the plane, knows why he's on the plane. He's so excited. He gets off the plane, gets in a cab, goes to the ballpark, and he's wandering around. He's got big eyes. He's got trophies over here and pictures of famous ball players over there. And then he sees, pardon the expression, he sees God. It's the club owner. And he rushes over. Oh, I am so glad to be here. You're going to be so glad you popped me on the... Just exuberant. Club owner's seen this before. And he says, son, why don't you come into my office? We'll get better acquainted. We'll have a chat. Oh, no problem, office. Club owner's walking down the hallway in his suit, and behind him is this ball player like a big floppy dog. Oh, yeah, no problem, I'll follow you anywhere. So they get into the club owner's office. Club owner shows him a chair, and you'd have thought there were tacks in that chair. That ball player just could not get his assets to stay in the chair. Club owner has seen this before. So he pushes a few pieces of paper across his desk and says, son, why don't you read these? These are the rules of the ballpark. And then we'll get better acquainted. Oh, no problem, I'm so happy to be here. And the kid starts reading. And he starts settling down. And by the time he gets to the bottom of that second page, he's got this wrinkle right here on his forehead. And he looks up and he goes, you know, I don't like some of these rules. The club owner says, son, you have three choices. You can accept the rules of the ballpark without conflict. You can decide that you like them. You can play ball, make really good money, and love your life playing, making money. That's option one. Option two, you can adhere to the rules of the ballpark with conflict. You can argue with me about them. You can struggle to get to practice on time. You will still play ball. You might even make decent money, but you will not be happy. Option three, you can get out of my ballpark. Whoa, just got here, don't want to leave. What were those first two options? Option one, you can accept the rules of the ballpark without conflict. Decide that you like them, play ball, make money, have fun. Option two, adhere to the rules with conflict. Not be happy, struggle to get to practice, still play ball, maybe make decent money, but not be happy. Now, when options are laid out that clearly, it's pretty easy. So the ball player made the obvious choice and went on and had a great career. When I figured this out, the first place that it dawned on me that I could apply it was not in business. When I went to visit my mama, whose ballpark was I in? Hers. What were my three options? Yeah. Option one, accept without conflict. Option two, adhere with conflict. Oh, that was so me. And option three, stay out of her ballpark. Well, it's my mama. I want the kids to know their grandmother. Option two had not been working so well for me for decades. All of a sudden I thought, what would happen if I chose option one? Remember, I said we could choose our attitude, so this was where the rubber met the road for me. What would happen if I chose option one? Well, the conversation changed on the way down to my mama's. Hey kids, we're going to grandma's house. What are the rules? What are the expectations? And by the time we got there, we were all on the same page. The fact that my mama did not have a heart attack that first visit is a testament to her fortitude. Because it was so different. Okay, Mom, you want to go to the store in 30 minutes? Hey, kids, store, 30 minutes, get ready, we're good. No conflict. We had a great time. Every time I went back to see her after that, we had a great time. Now, the other place that this started showing up took a little longer, and it's actually a little embarrassing when I think about how long it took before I asked the question. When my mama came to visit me, whose ballpark? Whose ballpark was she in? Oh, mine. Well, that would be different. If it's my ballpark, what are the rules? I had no clue. So had to figure that piece out. And then I had to figure out, how do I keep my rules intact? This is called integrity. How do I keep my rules intact in my ballpark? Well, I didn't want to tell my mom the ballpark theory. Yeah, didn't want to explain to her that she had options. I just gave her choices. The conversation changed. All that had to happen was the conversation changed. And it sounded like this. Yes, Mama, I know you want to watch the TV show at 7:30. We have to be on the ballpark at 6:30 for practice. Do you want to come with us to the ballpark or stay home and watch TV? Yes, Mama, I know you like to have breakfast at 7. We have breakfast at 6:30. Do you want oatmeal or eggs? The conversation changed. I did not have to explain to her that she had 3 choices. She figured that out all on her own. And funny thing is that once she realized that my ballpark was my ballpark and that these were just the rules of the game, it got easy, and then it got easier, because she chose option 3 and quit coming to visit. My husband at the time was celebrating, and we had a great time when we went to visit her. So there was absolutely nothing lost, except a lot of stress and a good bit of drama. Where does this play out in your world? So think about the question, on any given day, where do you spend most of your time? Whose ballpark are you in? What are the rules? If it's not your ballpark, you've got first to find out what the rules are. Second, you've got to decide what option you want. And I'm going to give you a clue. If you choose option 3 before you've explored option 1, where you accept the rules of that ballpark without conflict, you will carry that drama with you into your next ballpark. All right? If you are in conflict with the rules, if you're adhering with conflict, that's not the time to get out. That's the time to readjust and to go through those questions and the first 3 keys and get yourself to option 1. Because if you can get yourself to option 1 where you accept without conflict, remember, accept does not mean that you like. Okay? Accept means just that the unobjective observer says it is what it is. Anybody in here ever dealt with a narcissistic boss? Okay. It is what it is. That's a ballpark all on its own. And it has a very specific set of rules. One of my associates from the Greater Sarasota Coaches Alliance, that's her niche. That's all she coaches. She coaches narcissistic CEOs and turns them into functional bosses. She's known as the lion tamer. And that's all she does. And she is lovely for me to have as a compatriot because I get to bounce things off of her. When you understand the rules of the ballpark for a narcissist, it gets a lot easier to work with them. They only have one rule. I have to be right or I will die. Period. Once you understand how sad that is, how trapped they are, it's a little easier to come into compassion with them. And from a place of compassion, you can let your dialogue change, just like mine did with my mama. And the dialogue sounds like, I'm not sure if this is a good idea, but something you said yesterday made me think of this. I want to run it by you before I let anybody else know about it. What do you think? And underneath that is, oh, wise one. You don't have to say those words, but you come with that attitude. Why? Not because they're smarter than you, but because you recognize that they'll die without that. It's an interesting place to come into for compassion. Where else does this play out? Anybody ever struggled with a weight issue? Remember what I said, one of the things I wanted less of was weight. So here's my aha around the ballpark theory with weight. I did not know this story about my childhood until just a few years ago, and my mother told me. My mother said that when we were young, before they split up, because I was raised by a single mom way back in the day when that was not something you talked about in polite society. So I didn't know this story. My dad wasn't around very much. But the story was that when I was about 4, the rule was, anybody here old enough to know the Clean Plate Club? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So if I tell you that my dad was an Army sergeant, no. Clean Plate Club was a big deal in our household. And there was a day, a dinner, where my 4-year-old self decided I was not going to eat what was on my plate. Now this was a contest I was probably not going to win at 4. And my mom remembers that I sat at that table for hours after everybody else was gone. It traumatized her. I didn't even remember it. But then I realized that that's what was running in the background for me. So here's the question. When I was, as the adult, sitting down to eat, whose ballpark was I in? Not my dad's. I was in the ballpark of a 4-year-old who would do anything to make sure that plate was clean, because there were consequences if I didn't. Now, it's the ballpark of a 4-year-old. I've got 3 choices. I could accept the rules of the ballpark without conflict. I could adhere to them with conflict, which is how I had spent my whole life. Diet this, and I have been on every diet. I grew a grapefruit tree because I was on the grapefruit diet and one grapefruit had sprouted. Yeah, I mean, there was not a diet I didn't try, okay? So I had been adhering to the rules of her ballpark because I didn't even know they existed, but I had been in conflict with them. Now, I couldn't figure out option 3, short of a lobotomy. So it was like, all right, I'm in option 2, this isn't working. I mean, at that point, my weight was probably about 70, 80 pounds heavier than what I am now. I looked sort of like a round pumpkin if I wore orange. I don't wear orange very often for that reason. So wait a minute, option 1, if I accepted that I was in a 4-year-old ballpark, what would that look like? Oh. The dialogue changed, not with myself, but with the people around me. The first thing I did was make a rule in my household that nobody could put food on my plate but me. The second thing I did was get a really small plate. And I served myself a 4-year-old's portion. She could clean her plate, and I was losing weight. It was all good. I could do that really easily once I knew whose ballpark I was in. So these things have layers, and you're going to peel back some layers. The more you work with these questions and keys, you'll start to see how they play out in your life. And once you go through the what do I want more of, the what do I want less of, how I'm going to measure it, and what have I done in the past, what worked and what didn't, and then do the awareness piece with the breathing exercises so that you know you are in control of your emotional state, come into some honesty about your attitude, about how you really feel about what you're doing and who you're doing it with, so that you can then look at what the actions would be if you were okay with your life. What would you be doing differently? If you really knew that you were the right person to be doing what you're doing, come out of self-doubt and into self-confidence. Yeah, the action key is how I shifted from self-doubt to self-confidence. Because when you take the actions from the point of view of knowing that you are the absolute right person for the job, you start acting like you're the right person for the job. And once you start acting that way, your belief system changes because you're going to get different results. Results only come from actions. If you don't like the results you're seeing in your life, check your actions. Before you do anything with your actions, check your attitude. Before you do anything with your attitude, check your awareness, okay? It's a really simple system. But start with asking the question, whose ballpark am I in? What are the rules? And if it's your ballpark, please write down your rules. See if they make sense once you look at them in writing. They may not. They may actually be your mama's rules or your first boss's rules, and you just haven't upgraded the system yet. So you've come on quite a quick journey. And I hope, as my intention was, that you would find something in each of these keys that you would be able to apply immediately. So I hope that you found something valuable to take out of that. And I have a gift for everyone that's here. If there was something that you found that you want more information about or you want to dive deeper into, I've got a flyer in the back of the room. I've got a 4-part series that's based on this work. And that's coming up. It'll be in Bradenton. So please grab a flyer. I have 6 seats left, so that's about half the room that I still have space for in that training. And again, I have a gift for you because all of this work is done because I've sat where you are. And when I was sitting where you are, there were people willing to stand in the front of the room to inspire me, and that's why I'm willing to stand in front of the room, in the hopes that some of this inspired you to take some control over your life, create more of what you want and less of what you don't want. And to help you do that, there's an Elephant Tamer manifesto in the back of the room for each of you, standing up in the rack. Feel free to take it with you and let it remind you of these things. And I'll hang around, so if you have any questions, feel free to stick around and ask me. And then I have a huge favor. If there was something about tonight, that resonated with you, that you got something out of this, that you think will apply to your life, would you take a minute before you leave, see Al in the back of the room, and tell the camera what it is that you got out of this that's useful? I'd really appreciate it because that will help me help more people. So I'm Jackie Simmons. I'm known as the Elephant Tamer because my favorite thing is to help you tame the elephant in the room.